Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're as excited as I am to get your hands in some dirt, well let me tell you, now is the perfect time to start. Today we're diving into one of the most rewarding parts of homesteading, seed starting. Whether you're working in a tiny balcony or a larger garden space, starting your seeds indoors will help you get a head start on your growing season. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to get your seedlings off to a great start. So grab your seed packets and let's get started. First, let's talk about some of the supplies that are going to be essential, and those are trays. You are going to need some sort of trays. I have a few here. This one is one that I like the least, but I had to buy this in a pinch. But this is terrible quality. Quality really matters for trays because you can see that this one is very flimsy, and when you have small pots here with all your seedlings, trying to move this from one place to another is really a pain. Some people might not need to move it, but I do, especially when the weather starts to get nice outside and I want my plants to be hardened off or to be outside for a little bit, get some fresh air, get some natural light. I have to transport them from the basement all the way outside, and this is terrible for that. This is by far my favorite tray that I've had for a few years. It is the most sturdy of them all. I love it. The one downside of this one is that it's not as deep as these other ones. So that's one thing that I wish it would have. This looks dirty and worn out, but it's actually just the discoloration from the sun because this was sitting outside with some pots in it. But this is very sturdy. I believe I got this from a garden supply store, and I'll just put the link in the description box if you're interested. The other type of tray that I like the depth of it, and it's also very sturdy, although not as sturdy as the one that I just showed you. This one I got off Amazon, and it's more affordable because this one here, which is great quality, is also the more expensive one, and I just couldn't buy a whole lot of these. But I will use this one for like my heavier pots, and that's perfect for that. So those are the different types of trays that we need because we are going to be using these 6-cell inserts to go in here, and they fit perfectly in these trays. And I got these 6-cell trays from Epic Gardening. I use these for most of my seeds, as you're going to see today. Sometimes I use these pots for starting multiple seeds that later I will divide. And the last type of trays that I'm going to use are these very cheap aluminum trays that I used last year. So I figured that I would use them again this year. And these are specifically going to be used for onions. The next important supply that we need is seed starting mix. Now, I don't buy pre-made seed starting mix. We actually make our own here. And I actually made another video last year showing you how to make this starting mix. So I'm gonna put that up here in the screen, or also link it down in the description box so that you guys can find the exact recipe for this. Just to let you know, this is very simple and it has 4 different ingredients. It has cocoa coir, perlite, vermiculite, and worm castings. Now, I really do suggest when you are making your own starting mix to try not to put any compost or your own worm castings if you make it at home, because I made that mistake my first year and it was a disaster because I didn't realize that there were lots of little seeds, especially tomato seeds, in my worm compost bin that made it to my starting mix. And then when I planted all my tomatoes, I had no idea what variety was what. So that didn't work, and I had to start everything from scratch again. So after that experience, I always use worm compost that I buy from the store. But those are the only ingredients that are in this mix, and that is what I'm going to use to fill my trays. Today is February 17. So what could we possibly start right now when the ground is covered in snow and it seems like spring is nowhere in sight? If you watched my last video, I showed you my entire system of how I plan for my garden season. And I show you how I use my planner to write down everything that needs to get done each month so that I don't miss a thing. Also in that video, I showed you how I created my garden map. And this garden map is so helpful because it shows me where I'm going to put certain plants, and that allows me to know how many plants I actually need. And if I need 10 plants of something, for example, I probably will grow maybe 12 to 15 just in case I have any failed ones. And if I have any extra ones at the end, I'll have some to be able to give away. But that helps me because then I'm not underplanting or overplanting. So make sure you check out that video to see the entire planning method to be able to have a successful growing season. Now, as I'm looking at my planner today, here it's showing me what I need to plant. And these are all the things I'm going to be planting today. I'm going to be starting pepper seeds, onions, broccoli, cabbage, radicchio, lettuce, and kale. Those are the ones that I can start now. And I was able to find that out using that method that I showed you in my last video. So I am in zone 6A. So these are perfectly safe to start right now. And I do this every year and it works out very well. If you're watching this and it's towards the end of February or even into March, don't worry, it is not too late. You can totally start these and they will be fine. You definitely don't have to make your own soil, but if you are going to buy soil, make sure you are using the seed starting mix, not the potting mix. And because I don't buy seed starting mix, I don't have any in particular that I recommend. It is just more cost effective for us to make it ourselves. And we just like to know everything that goes into it. So my seed starting mix right now is nice and moist. It is not too damp, but I definitely don't want it to be dry. That is one thing I do whenever I am working with either planting like this or up potting. I always make sure that the soil I use is evenly moist and not dry. When the soil is too dry, it does not absorb water well, so it will just run off to the sides and it will not get to where it needs to go. First, what I'm doing right now is filling these trays with this potting mix. And I want it to be nicely packed. It doesn't have to be too tightly packed, but you also don't want it to be too fluffed up. So I just make sure I pat it down so that there are no air pockets or any areas in the tray that haven't gotten any soil. That's just going to cause a lot of problems for the roots later on. After looking at my planner and my garden map, I know I'm going to need 36 cabbage plants, and that's accounting for a few extras that I might need. So what I'm going to do is plant 2 of these 6-cell trays, but I'm going to plant 4 seeds in each. And the reason I do this is because once they grow a little bit, I will divide them up and put them in their own little pot. That helps me so much with space. Right now, I won't need to deal with hundreds of these little seedlings. This is also helpful because in the event that not all of these germinate, I will be fine and I will have enough because I am planting more than what I need. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I make like 4 tiny little divots. That's where I'm dropping each of my seeds. I might do 2 seeds in each hole. That's okay, it's not overkill. It's just making sure that I have the amount of plants that I need. And I have so many of these cabbage seeds that I am not worried about it. I think in my packet there's like over 300 of these seeds. My one packet has lasted me years. I recently just got a new order because we've been growing a lot of cabbage, but it lasts for a long time. So now that I'm done, I'm just going to lightly cover these, and I'm just going to kind of move this a little bit, move the soil a little bit, or I might add a little bit of soil right on top. And I'm just going to lightly press on the soil just so that the seeds can have good contact with the soil and they're not like moving about everywhere. They don't need to be buried deep, so just a light bit of soil on top will do. So that is all the cabbage that I need for now. I am going to do the same thing with my other brassica seeds. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to plant 4 in each cell, and that's because I am planning on dividing them later and transplanting them to their own little pot. Sometimes what people do is they just select the strongest plant and get rid of the ones that they don't want to use, but I don't like to do that. I I like to divide them and put them in a new cell all on their own. And I will actually show you the process of how I do this. So in maybe 2 weeks or so, these are going to be ready for the next step, which is to divide them out and put them in their own individual cell. And I'm going to show you how to do that process. For lettuce, I am going to be growing 4 different types of lettuce that we have really enjoyed in the past and have worked really well for us. One of them is a prize head leaf lettuce. Then there's this other one called Landis Winter that we got as a free seed from Baker Creek, and it worked really well. And it even survived through some snow. So I know it will be able to withstand the cold spring weather. Then there's this other one that is beautiful and red. We really like this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up 1 6 cell tray per variety. And that's going to give me a lot of lettuce. And that's really what I want. I want a lot of lettuce, first of all. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to plant in 4 little spots here. And again, I will be able to separate the lettuce once it starts growing a little bit. And I like to do that because, at least for me, lettuce has always been a little bit tricky to germinate. This helps me just be sure that I have some lettuce germinated. And I don't want to just put 1 seed or expect 1 plant out of each cell, because sometimes they just don't germinate. This way has really worked well for me over the years. Even though I have 4 little planting holes in each cell, I will put maybe 2 or even 3 seeds in each hole, because sometimes they just don't germinate the way I want them to. And some of these seeds are also a couple years old. It doesn't feel very wasteful if I end up having a few extra seedlings that I don't need. But this is lettuce. There's always room for lettuce somewhere. It's such a small thing that you can just tuck in anywhere. And because these are going to be growing in the spring, like there's going to be a lot of room for them before the main summer crops are getting big. And it's also very hard just to drop 1 seed because they're so tiny, and inevitably like 2 or 3 drop every time you're trying to just put 1 seed down. So again, with these, I'm going to very, very, very lightly cover them. I think some seed packets say not to cover them, or that they need some light in order to germinate. But I've found every time I did that, the seeds just got dried up. The moisture didn't hold. It didn't work. So it does work for me to just cover it lightly. So I put like a little dusting of this seed starting mix, and they do just fine. So again, I want to make sure all my seeds are getting good contact with the soil there. For my radicchio, kale, and pepper seeds, I decided to only make 2 planting holes in each cell because I just don't need that many, and I'm only putting 1 seed in each hole. These are easier to germinate because they're bigger, and hopefully they will do well. Now that all my other seedlings are planted, I'm going to move on to the onions. And this is the method that I use for onions. This is probably going to be the last year I use these aluminum trays, just because I don't like the way they're holding up, but I do like this method of sowing in a flat. So I want to look for a good quality one that I can invest in because I really like this method of planting all my seeds, or a whole bunch of seeds, hundreds of seeds in this one tray, and then transplanting them from here to the permanent bed outside in the garden. So the way I'm doing this right now is like a 2-tray system. The tray at the top has some drainage holes, and the tray at the bottom is also very useful because that's how I'm going to water these. This method worked really well for me last year. And another thing about this method that is a little bit different from my other seeds is that because these onions are going to stay here all the way until mid to late April when I transplant them outside, I want to make sure that they are very well fed. So this is the perfect time for me to add Trifecta Plus to this potting mix. And I'm gonna do that in all these trays here. I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons full of this, and I'm going to mix it here really well before I plant my seeds in these trays. I have 2 types of onions that I am growing, Alyssa Craig and this sweet yellow Spanish onions. And the packet says there are about 300 seeds in this packet. So I'm just spreading them out as best as I can. One thing that is really good about onions is that they are very easy to separate, and even if you damage their roots a little bit, they are going to be just fine. So I'm not very picky or very particular during this process. Although sometimes a packet says there's about 300 seeds, but it could be more than that. It does look like a lot more. So I might need to do another tray, because although I do want them to be packed in there, I also don't want them to choke each other out. So yes, I'm gonna save this one for another tray. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab some of this potting mix and cover it lightly. These are bigger seeds, so they can have a little bit more soil on top. And again, I'm just patting them down very gently because again, I want the contact with the soil right there. Now that I finished planting all my seeds, I need to make sure these are in a safe spot. I will not be putting in the basement yet. I will keep them up here in our living room next to the windowsill, because that way they will be in a nice environment with a temperature that is close to 70 degrees. Having them here also reminds me to water them very often. I don't bottom water yet. I water at the top and I just spray very lightly and often. And once they start sprouting, it'll be time for me to take them downstairs to the basement where we have our grow lights. And then I will start bottom watering these trays as well. I will be showing you this journey, all the steps that I go through to make sure I have a successful growing season. I created a playlist for you to watch, starting with our homestead goals and also sharing how I plan for our garden and then all the seed starting process. Thank you so much for joining me today, and make sure you subscribe so that you can continue to follow along in this journey. I'll see you next time.